Hold on. Rewind that for a second. Play it again. Did you catch that? Did you see Caitlin Clark yank her hand away from Stephanie White like she touched a live wire? Look at Clark's expression afterward. Then, later that same night, same game, she's visibly going back and forth with assistant coach Brianne January on the bench. 2 tense moments, 1 game, and this happened during a win. I'm Dre Fiber, this is Street Hoops, and Indiana Fever fans are starting to ask serious questions because the tension inside this organization is no longer staying behind closed doors. It's happening in full public view. And while all of this unfolds, Caitlin Clark is simultaneously becoming one of the biggest stars in all of sports. She was just named Grand Marshal of the Indianapolis 500. Think about that for a second. Her influence has already grown far beyond the WNBA itself. Now let's break down what happened on May 17, 2026, when the Fever beat the Seattle Storm 89-78. Clark finished with 21 points and 10 assists in another dominant performance. Multiple reports also noted that she set a new WNBA record for the most career games with at least 20 points and 10 assists, passing Courtney Vandersloot. On paper, this should have been a celebration from start to finish. Instead, the internet focused on the sideline drama. The first moment came when cameras caught Stephanie White reaching toward Clark during a timeout. Clark immediately pulled her hand away sharply, not casually, not playfully. It was quick, noticeable, and impossible to ignore. White appeared surprised and responded immediately, while Clark looked completely finished with the interaction. Fans instantly started debating what it meant. Then came the second moment, involving Brianne January. During a discussion on the bench about defensive positioning, Clark appeared frustrated with the coaching feedback. The exchange became visibly emotional, and moments later Clark stood up and moved to another seat entirely. That's the kind of body language people notice, especially when it happens back-to-back in the same game. Now, before people rush to dismiss this, with coaches and players argue all the time. Yes, disagreements happen in sports. Passion is normal. Frustration is normal. But fans are reacting because these moments felt different. The reactions looked personal, emotional, and very public. Whether it's temporary frustration or signs of deeper tension inside the Fever organization, one thing is clear. People are paying attention now more than ever. People keep saying it is just competitive basketball. And sure, emotions run high in every professional sport. But there's still a line between normal intensity and repeated physical confrontations on the sideline. That is the part many fans cannot ignore when it comes to Caitlin Clark. Think about the biggest stars in basketball. When was the last time anyone saw a coach walk across the court to grab LeBron James by the arm? When did a sideline assistant ever spin Nikola Jokic around during a heated moment? When has Giannis Antetokounmpo had to pull his hand away from someone on the bench because he clearly did not want to be touched? Moments like that are extremely rare, especially involving the faces of a league. Superstar players are usually given a certain amount of space and respect because organizations understand their value. These are the athletes who sell jerseys, fill arenas, increase television ratings, and carry the public image of the sport. Yet many people believe Caitlin Clark has not been afforded that same treatment. According to discussions surrounding reports from 3 Minutes Reports, this latest sideline exchange is not being viewed as an isolated incident. There have reportedly been several moments captured on video or described by team reporters where Clark appeared to be physically redirected, confronted, or grabbed in ways that made fans uncomfortable. One of the most talked about examples involved a coach crossing the court while Clark was energizing the crowd and confronting her directly. Other incidents centered around visible disagreements on the bench involving defensive assignments, positioning, and communication during games. Now another moment has sparked debate after Clark appeared to pull her hand away from assistant coach Brianne January during a tense bench interaction. Reports also claimed that Fever executives Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf were nearby when it happened, which only increased attention around the situation. Critics argue these moments are beginning to form a pattern instead of isolated emotional exchanges. At the same time, context matters. Brianne January is not just a random assistant coach. She is a respected former WNBA champion, a former All-Star, and one of the primary defensive voices on Indiana's coaching staff. By most accounts, her relationship with Clark has not been openly hostile. Earlier this season, Clark even reposted January's content on social media and joked about her defensive drills with younger players. That suggests there is familiarity and some level of mutual respect between them. Still, the larger conversation continues because Clark is not an ordinary player. She is a record-breaking star whose popularity has helped elevate attendance, television exposure, merchandise sales, and overall attention surrounding the WNBA. Analyst Rachel Demita recently addressed the controversy on her podcast, arguing that heated exchanges between coaches and players happen regularly in competitive basketball. While that may be true, many fans believe the concern is not about passion or intensity. It is about whether the league's biggest star is consistently being treated with the professionalism and respect expected at the highest level of the game. Competitive tension between coaches and players exists in every professional sport. Even analysts defending the Fever coaching staff have acknowledged that point. Rachel Demita recently compared the situation to the fiery relationship seen in the NFL, mentioning how elite competitors like Patrick Mahomes have experienced intense sideline moments with coaches while still maintaining strong professional relationships. That is a fair argument, and it deserves consideration. But Demita also admitted something equally important. There's currently a microscope on the Indiana Fever coaching staff because many fans are deeply frustrated with how the opening stretch of the season has unfolded. She specifically pointed to Stephanie White's press conference approach as one reason public distrust continues to grow. According to Demita, fans are reacting strongly to moments where White has been directly asked about Caitlin Clark and appeared unwilling to fully center her in the conversation. That issue may actually be more damaging than any viral sideline clip because it creates the perception that the organization is hesitant to openly celebrate its biggest star. A major example came after Indiana's overtime loss to the Washington Mystics on May 15th. The Fever fell 104-102, but Clark delivered one of the most impressive performances of the young season. She scored 32 points and nearly carried Indiana to victory by herself. In the fourth quarter alone, Clark accounted for 17 of Indiana's 31 points, while knocking down 5 critical three-pointers. She erased a 9-point deficit forced overtime and kept the Fever alive in a game they looked destined to lose. Afterward, during the post-game press conference, a reporter asked Stephanie White specifically about Clark's fourth-quarter performance. Fans expected a direct answer, praising the effort of the player who had almost single-handedly rescued the team. Instead, White redirected the conversation toward the collective effort of the group. She spoke about the team overall, rather than focusing on Clark individually, and many viewers immediately noticed it. The reaction online was swift and emotional. Critics accused White of consistently avoiding direct praise for Clark, arguing that every conversation about the Fever star somehow gets redirected elsewhere. Many fans began repeating the same complaint. Why does the coaching staff appear uncomfortable fully embracing the player who has become the face of the league? Whether those accusations are fair or not, the perception itself has become a major storyline. What makes the situation even more significant is that fans on both sides of the debate seem to agree that there is a communication problem. Some defend the coaching staff and insist the criticism has gone too far. Others believe the Fever need major leadership changes. Yet both groups acknowledge that something feels off in how the organization publicly talks about its franchise player. At the same time, outside the Fever organization, Caitlin Clark continues to receive enormous recognition. While sideline clips and coaching controversies dominate social media, the city of Indianapolis has honored her in a completely different way. Clark was named the Grand Marshal for the 110th running of the Indianapolis 500 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on May 24th. That is not a small ceremonial appearance. The Indy 500 is one of the most iconic sporting events in America and one of the largest single-day sporting spectacles in the world. The honor reflects just how massive Clark's impact has become, not only in basketball, but across the entire sports landscape. The Indianapolis 500 is not just another sporting event. It is widely recognized as the largest single-day spectator sporting event in the world, drawing more than 350,000 fans to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And this year, the person standing on that stage, delivering the command to start the race in front of a global audience on Fox, will be Caitlin Clark. Think about the significance of that for a moment. The list of previous Grand Marshals includes names like Peyton Manning, Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, Tamika Catchings, and even former President Gerald Ford. That is the level of company Clark is now joining. It shows just how quickly she has become more than a basketball star. She is now one of the defining public figures in the state of Indiana and one of the most recognizable athletes in America. In her official statement released through ESPN, Clark said she was honored to represent Gainbridge as the Grand Marshal of the Indy 500. She described the event as an iconic tradition and said she was excited to experience one of the greatest spectacles in racing firsthand. IndyCar and Indianapolis Motor Speedway President J. Douglas Bowles explained that fans had wanted Clark involved in the event ever since she was drafted by the Indiana Fever. Her schedule prevented it from happening during the last 2 seasons. But this year, a 6-day break in the WNBA calendar finally allowed the partnership to come together. On the surface, this should have been a simple celebration. Indiana's biggest sports star receiving one of the state's highest honors should have united everyone around the organization. But instead, it added another layer to the ongoing discussion surrounding the Fever coaching staff and their public treatment of Clark. When Fever head coach Stephanie White was asked about Clark being named Grand Marshal, her answer immediately drew attention online. White acknowledged that the role was one of the greatest honors anyone could receive in the state of Indiana. That part of the response was positive. However, many fans focused on how she introduced the comment, beginning with uncertainty by saying she was not sure whether Clark had attended the race before. To some people, that detail sounded harmless. To others, it felt like another example of what they see as a recurring pattern. Critics argue that even during moments designed entirely to celebrate Clark, the enthusiasm from the coaching staff often feels restrained or distant. Fans expected a stronger endorsement, something direct and emotional about Clark representing Indiana on one of the biggest stages in sports. Instead, they felt they received another measured, guarded response. That perception is what continues fueling the broader debate. It is not just about one sideline exchange or one press conference answer anymore. Supporters believe they are watching a consistent pattern in which the organization struggles to fully embrace the magnitude of Clark's influence and popularity. Meanwhile, Clark's public profile continues to grow beyond basketball itself. She is no longer simply the face of the Fever or even the WNBA. She has become one of the defining sports figures associated with the entire state of Indiana. This weekend, she will stand before hundreds of thousands of fans at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, with millions more watching worldwide, and deliver the command that starts one of the most famous races on Earth. That moment alone shows how massive her presence has become. This is no longer just a local celebrity moment or a simple honor for the Indiana Fever's star player. Caitlin Clark being named Grand Marshal of the Indianapolis 500 represents something much bigger. The Indy 500 is one of the most iconic sporting events in the world, and the people chosen for that role are not random athletes having a good season. They are cultural figures. They are names that transcend their sport. The WNBA rarely receives moments on that level, but Clark does because she has grown beyond the label of basketball player. She has become a phenomenon. That reality should be impossible for the Fever front office to ignore. Clark's profile away from basketball is expanding faster than any player the league has ever produced. She is already a major national brand ambassador for Gamebridge. Earlier this year, she earned MVP honors at the FIBA Olympic qualifying tournament in Puerto Rico. Now she's preparing to stand at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in front of more than 350,000 fans and millions watching worldwide as she gives the command to start the most famous race in America. Her popularity now stretches far beyond Indiana and far beyond the WNBA itself. At the exact same time, however, the conversation surrounding her inside the Fever organization feels completely different. On one side, Clark is being celebrated as one of the defining sports personalities in the country. On the other side, viral clips continue showing visible frustration on the bench, tense sideline exchanges with coaches, and press conference moments where she appears exhausted by repeated questions about internal dynamics. That contrast is what has people talking. The issue is no longer about one awkward interaction or one misunderstood quote. It is about the growing disconnect between how the outside world sees Caitlin Clark and how many fans believe she is being handled within her own organization. Supporters look at the level of respect and celebration she receives nationally and compare it to the tension that sometimes surrounds her during games and media appearances. To them, those two realities no longer seem aligned. At the same time, fairness matters in this discussion. Stephanie White's accomplishments deserve acknowledgement. She is one of the most successful coaches in Indiana Fever history and won games long before Clark arrived. She is a former WNBA Coach of the Year, an Indiana Basketball Hall of Famer, and recently earned a role on Team USA's coaching staff for the upcoming FIBA Women's World Cup. Those credentials are significant and cannot simply be dismissed because of online criticism or viral clips. Still, there is another question emerging that many fans continue asking. Is the coach who is best for the Indiana Fever over the last several years necessarily the right coach for Caitlin Clark during this moment in her career? Those are not automatically the same thing. That is why the timing of the recent headlines feels almost symbolic. In the same week that Clark appeared in viral sideline drama clips, she was also elevated onto one of the biggest public stages in sports. One story showed tension and uncertainty inside the organization. The other showed the entire state of Indiana embracing her as a defining representative of its identity and culture. The contrast between those two images is exactly why this conversation continues growing louder. On one side, the entire state of Indiana is telling Caitlin Clark to step onto one of the biggest stages in sports and represent everything great about the state. She is being celebrated as the face of the Indianapolis 500, the greatest spectacle in racing.